The applause was warm when Morgan Freeman walked onto Kelly Clarkson's stage, the kind of applause that carried history in it. It wasn't just for a guest, it was for decades of gravitas, that voice that felt like it had narrated childhoods, tragedies, triumphs, and truths people trusted without question. Freeman moved with his usual calm, offering a gentle wave, a half-smile that seemed to settle the room before he even sat down. Kelly Clarkson beamed, clearly excited, her energy bright and welcoming as she leaned forward, eager to begin. At first, the conversation flowed easily. They spoke about storytelling, about the power of voice and silence, about how some roles follow an actor for a lifetime while others disappear as soon as the credits roll. Freeman told a quiet anecdote about his early years, about waiting for moments rather than chasing fame, and the audience listened as if afraid to miss a syllable. Kelly laughed in all the right places, nodding enthusiastically, occasionally interjecting with admiration that felt genuine. The band chimed in softly, and the atmosphere was relaxed, even intimate. Then the conversation drifted, subtly at first, toward responsibility in entertainment. Kelly framed it as a discussion about influence, about how public figures shape narratives whether they intend or not. Freeman's posture changed almost imperceptibly. He leaned back, then forward again, hands resting calmly on his knees. His smile remained, but something sharper moved behind his eyes. He responded thoughtfully at first, choosing his words carefully, speaking about nuance and intention, about how stories could enlighten or imprison depending on who controlled them. Kelly pushed a little further, not aggressively, but persistently, bringing up expectations placed on actors of a certain stature. Her tone was conversational, but the implication lingered. Freeman paused longer this time before answering. The pause itself seemed to stretch across the studio, pulling the audience into it. When he spoke, his voice was still smooth, still composed, but there was an unmistakable edge beneath it. He questioned the idea that responsibility could be assigned so easily, challenged the assumption that visibility automatically meant obligation to a particular viewpoint. A ripple moved through the crowd, curiosity mixed with unease. Kelly laughed lightly, attempting to soften the moment, but Freeman continued, clarifying his position with deliberate precision. He corrected a phrase she had used, gently but firmly, explaining how language shapes perception. It wasn't hostile, but it wasn't passive either. Each sentence landed with weight, as if he were speaking not just to Kelly, but to an invisible audience far beyond the studio walls. The band stayed silent now. Cameras held tighter shots. Kelly adjusted in her seat, her smile becoming more practiced, more controlled. She tried to pivot, to bring the conversation back to safer ground, but Freeman wasn't finished. He spoke about being misunderstood, about decades of being projected onto rather than listened to. He talked about interviews that appear open but are guided by conclusions already made. His words were calm, yet unmistakably personal. Kelly attempted another light joke, something self-deprecating, but it fell flat. The laughter that followed was scattered and uncertain. Freeman looked directly at her, not unkindly, but with a seriousness that demanded attention. He finished his thought slowly, deliberately, drawing a clear line between dialogue and performance. In that moment, the studio felt smaller, quieter, charged with something unscripted and unresolved. Producers shifted off stage. A cue card flickered. Kelly inhaled, preparing to regain control, but the energy had already shifted. The audience could feel it, the sense that they were witnessing something real, something that wasn't meant to be trimmed neatly in post-production. Freeman sat back, expression calm once more, but the silence that followed his final sentence spoke louder than applause ever could. Kelly tried to recover the rhythm of the show, her instincts kicking in as she offered a gracious nod and a quick breath meant to reset the room. She thanked Morgan for his honesty, framing it as a powerful reminder of perspective, and suggested they shift to lighter territory. But the air didn't lift. Freeman's calm had hardened into resolve, not anger, but a steadiness that made retreat feel dishonest. He acknowledged her attempt with a courteous smile, then gently declined the pivot, explaining that moments like this were precisely when conversation mattered most. He spoke about how talk shows promise openness yet often move too quickly to comfort, how difficult questions deserve space rather than jokes to smooth their edges. His voice never rose, but it carried a gravity that pressed against the walls. Kelly listened, her hands folded tightly, eyes flicking toward the camera and then back to him. She tried to interject, to clarify her intent, but Freeman continued, emphasizing that disagreement wasn't disruption, it was participation. The audience shifted in their seats, unsure whether to applaud or remain silent. From off stage, Producers began signaling more urgently. A stage manager stepped closer to the wing, whispering into a headset. Kelly glanced down briefly, then back up, her smile returning with effort. She thanked Freeman again and announced a commercial break, her tone upbeat but strained. The band began to stir, fingers hovering over instruments, waiting for the cue that would usually dissolve tension into music. It didn't come fast enough. Freeman stood. The movement was unhurried, deliberate. For a split second, the studio froze, as if unsure whether this was part of the show. He adjusted his jacket, turned toward the audience, and offered a small, respectful nod. There was no dramatic gesture, no pointed remark. Just a quiet decision made visible. Kelly rose halfway from her seat, surprised, calling his name softly, but he was already stepping away from the couch. Security and staff moved instinctively, not aggressively, more as a protocol than a response. The applause that followed was hesitant, scattered, some clapping out of respect, others out of confusion. Cameras scrambled to reframe, then abruptly cut to a wide shot before the feed faded to commercial earlier than planned. In living rooms across the country, viewers blinked at their screens, sensing they had just witnessed something unfinished. Backstage, Freeman walked calmly down the corridor, passing framed photos of smiling guests and celebratory moments that now felt distant. A producer tried to catch up, offering apologies, explanations, requests to talk it through. Freeman listened politely, thanked them for their professionalism, and declined further discussion. He wasn't angry, he explained, just clear. Clear about boundaries, about when conversation turns into choreography. Within minutes, phones buzzed. Clips began circulating online, cropped and captioned, slowed down and replayed. Some praised Freeman for standing his ground, calling it a masterclass in dignity. Others criticized the moment, accusing him of hijacking a platform meant for lighthearted dialogue. Kelly released a brief statement emphasizing respect and misunderstanding, her words careful, measured, conciliatory. Freeman remained silent. By evening, the moment had grown larger than the studio it happened in. Commentators dissected body language, tone, timing. Fans argued about intent versus impact. Media outlets debated whether the show had mishandled the exchange or whether Freeman had refused the rules of the format. Lost in the noise was the quiet truth of what had happened. Two people, both seasoned performers in their own way, colliding at the fragile line between conversation and control. Days later, the clip was still being shared, not because of outrage alone, but because of the stillness at its center, the calm refusal, the unresolved ending. In an industry built on polish and predictability, the moment lingered like a pause that never quite released. And for those who watched closely, it wasn't about who was right or wrong. It was about a reminder that even in the most rehearsed spaces, something unscripted can still step forward, say its piece, and walk away.